समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
The focus today is on the easternmost part of India. What is the easternmost part of India? Look at the map and look at Arunachal Pradesh. As you see east, 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 just the edge of Arunachal Pradesh, you have a dagger kind of territory, piece of territory that looks like a dagger going into Myanmar territory. That is the Tirap corridor. At the tip of that territory lies the little town, now town of Vijayanagar. Vijayanagar is the most extreme point in the east of India, the easternmost part of India. Across this district also lies Myanmar. Myanmar, as we know, is currently undergoing a massive civil war. But more than that, this part of Myanmar, northern Myanmar, or what used to be northern Burma, has always had insurgencies. And the Burmese authorities or Myanmarese authorities or the Yangon authorities have had very little, or Naypyidaw authorities now, because the capital has changed, they've had very little control over North Burma. It's been filled with insurgent groups, ethnic insurgent group. Then you see there are other landmarks, Khonsa Pass, you see Pangsao Pass. Pangsao Pass again leads into Myanmar, again very distant east on the map of India. It is across these territories, across Vijayanagar, Pangsao Pass and Longwa. Come a little bit south and you will find the Mon district of Nagaland. There is a little landmark there, tiny village called Longwa, which sometimes now adventure tourists also go to. Across Longwa as well. This is where a few camps, definitely 2 camps of ULFA, that is United Liberation Front of Assam. In this case, ULFA I. I stands for independent. It's a checkered history. I will take you through some of it as we go along. Too much detail will be what young people these days call TMI, which is too much information. But I'll tell you some. Alpha independent, because Alpha has gone through many splits. And you can say Alpha is now Alpha pro-truce or pro-talks, that's how it was called. And then those who did not want talks, who did not want to make peace with the Indian sovereign authority or government of India, they called themselves Alpha I. These camps were hit by a bunch of drone strikes. No missile, no surface-to-surface missiles, drone strikes. However, nobody is claiming credit or blame for these drone strikes. At the same time, you can be quite sure now that these strikes have taken place. Indian Army has denied it. They've said they had nothing to do with it. Assam government has denied it. In fact, Assam government has also said that Assam's territory has not been used to carry out these strikes. Myanmar government and army are not making any claims, and they will not do so either, because their interests, in a way, while they might like to work with India and help India and cooperate with India, in this region, it may not be particularly in their interest to hit these groups, because for them, these groups can help balance some of the groups that are fighting the Myanmarese army's authority, which is very, very Tatmadaw, as it's called, Myanmarese army. That authority is very, very, very weak in these areas. That's why these Indian insurgents or remnants of Indian insurgents have made camps there. These camps got hit. They also got hit at a time when there was information that the key leaders were there. Now, if you're an army of just about 300-400 people, everybody can be a general or a brigadier. So, in the underground, people give themselves ranks, or they are given ranks in our conversations. And this goes back to the days of insurgency in Nagaland. When we were children, we used to see these stories in newspapers that SS Major so-and-so captured, or SS Colonel so-and-so killed from the Naga underground, your immediate thing was SS means what? SS used to exist in Hitler's era with the Nazis. It went out with the Nazis. But no, it is not that. SS in the Indian Armed Forces or in the Indian establishment's dictionary stands for self-styled. So these are insurgents with military style ranks, but usually we would refer to them as SS Lieutenant so-and-so, SS Brigadier so-and-so. So who are the key figures killed in these strikes? Now, there are statements issued by what looks like Alpha I, although reliability or credibility of these is limited because we don't know where these are coming from. Is it disinformation? I don't know. The fact is, by this time, it is quite sufficiently clear that these attacks have taken place and a bunch of people have died. It looks like, as these quote-unquote Alpha I statements tell us, that there was a round of attacks between 2 and 4 a.m. And then, when topmost commander of Alpha I, Paresh Barua, is supposedly or reputedly either in the Yunnan province of China or maybe in some safe house or some camp on the border between the Yunnan province of China and Myanmar. This side or that side, I don't know, but somewhere there has the protection, again, reputedly has the protection of the Chinese security agencies, because everybody likes leverage. These are very difficult frontiers, very, very imperiled frontiers. In fact, I would say that also was precisely the title of a wonderful book that late Nari Rustamji, a distinguished officer from a unique cadre called Indian Frontier Administrative Service, wrote about 40 years back. So check out that book if you can find it on internet. Imperiled frontiers. So these are very imperiled frontiers because these are also very loosely administered and very thinly populated. And that's why the countries of this region like to hold leverage against others. The friend wants leverage with friend, and foe, of course, wants leverage with foe. So everybody plays this game. The Chinese play it, of course, the Myanmaris play it, we play it, Bangladesh plays it, everybody does. And this goes on. That's why it looks like Paresh Barua was not in these camps. He was away. However, a man called Nayan Medhi is also called Nayan Asom. Alpha I key figures don't use their second name. It becomes like a nom de guerre, a name for warfare. And so they suffix Asom with all their names. So Nayan Medhi or Nayan Asom carried the title Lieutenant General. So self-styled Lieutenant General Nayan Medhi was killed. As his last rites were being carried out, repeat strikes took place according to these supposed Alpha I statements. Repeat strikes took place at the funeral and more people were killed. Alpha I claims or alleges that 19 of their cadres were killed. That, I would say, today would be about 10% of their entire armed force because they are very small now. However, whatever is small tends to become big. And as I take you along this, you will see how this works out, because there is also an economics to insurgency. So 19 of their cadres got killed, including Brigadier Ganesh Lohan, or Brigadier self-style everywhere, or Brigadier Ganesh Asom, and Colonel, again self-style, Colonel Pradeep Asom. These three got killed along with others. Now, this, after a long time, is the first supposedly Indian action against Alpha, because Alpha is generally seen to have weakened a great deal over time, particularly after 2023, when Himanta Biswa Sarma's government signed one more big peace accord with Arvind Rajakhova. Arvind Rajakhova is a former chairman of Alpha who had come overground in 2009. He came overground in 2009 with a bunch of supporters who also surrendered, and there was a big rehabilitation plan carried out. A lot of money was paid out to them. Money was paid out, and also banks were told to give them loans without collateral. They were looked after quite well. Since then, Arvind Rajakhova has been overground. All of these people who came out with him were in jail for some time. I will give you some names. They were in jail. Most of them have come out on bail now or are leading normal lives in the mainstream. Since then, ULFA itself has not had much strength. Whatever remained went away. Some had gone in the past to Bangladesh. Bangladesh was safe harbor for them until Khalida Zia was there. Once Khalida Zia lost power, then Sheikh Hasina's government came in and they acted strongly against ULFA rebels. That's when Arvind Rajkhova and others were either arrested and handed over to India, or they were forced to flee and they came into India. In fact, the other side of the political divide in Bangladesh, that is not just the Khalida Zia side, but also the Jamaat-e-Islami side, they greatly resented this. In 2012, once again, a big effort was made to bring weapons, RDX, explosives, grenades by the truckload, in fact, by 10 trucks load. And these came into the Chittagong port from someplace, wherever this stuff comes from. And these trucks were being taken for supplies to ULFA, and these Government of India, Indian agencies came to know. These were then intercepted, people were arrested in 2012, and that is something that Bangladeshi right greatly resented, that not only was Sheikh Hasina's government actively helping India put down ULFA, but in this case, this new supply of weapons had also been stopped. Now, I will give you a little sidelight. When these protests were going on, particularly against India, after the changeover in Bangladesh, after Sheikh Hasina was deposed and exiled to India, one of the protests involved protesters going into the Bangladesh-India border to protest against the BSF, because the allegation was that BSF had shot somebody or had beaten up somebody on the border. In that protest, they had taken their protesters in 10 trucks. So you can understand the symbolism of those 10 trucks. And that also explains to us how complex these borders are. However, at this point, there's almost no ULFA presence in Bangladesh, because they were expelled, either caught or handed over, or expelled by Sheikh Hasina's government. The only place where they found refuge is in Myanmar, because Myanmar is ungoverned. There is total anarchy, particularly in these distant regions of Myanmar. In fact, if you come further south, you will also find that along the borders of Manipur, it is in Myanmar that many of the Indian groups are also operating. The strong Meitei groups that exist across the border are there. Sometimes they're even found in Myanmarese army uniforms, and it seems that they are in a way acting as adjuncts to the Myanmarese army. I told you everybody plays games in this case. Everybody likes leverage, and everybody's enemy is somebody else's friend or ally. In this case, because the Myanmarese think that the Kuki element, the Kuki tribal element, and those forces are helping or are operating with the tribal militias, tribal rebels who are fighting the Myanmarese army. They see these Meitei groups as allies. So this is a very complicated region. This is where these ULFA people have gone. These ULFA people have gone. The other group which might have been hit, or some presence of which might have been hit, is a group called NSCN-K. NSCN-K stands for the National Socialist Council of Nagaland. The same name as Thungaling Muiwa's NSCN, which has been negotiating with Government of India now for more than a decade for permanent peace in Nagaland. That used to be called NSCN-IM earlier. M is for Muiwa. I is for Isaac Chishiswu, a Sema tribe leader. Thungaling Muiwa is a Tangkhul tribe leader. Nagas have many tribes. Isaac died some time back, so now there's only Muiwa. When NSCN decided to make peace with India, initiate peace talks with India, and this happens with every insurgency. The leaders decide to make peace, a larger group decides to make peace, but a splinter always stays back, saying we don't accept it, we want our maximalist demands. In Nagaland, that was also a case of tribal divisions. So some major tribes, say Angamis and Semas, they had predominantly made their peace with Government of India with the 1975 Shillong Peace Accord. Of those that remained, NSCN then became a large organization, because then when the 1975 peace was signed, then Muiwa and Isaac Chishiswu said, we don't accept it, we will continue fighting. So they formed NSCN. NSCN kept on fighting. When they decided to make peace, then another splinter group said, no, we are not going with you. We'll keep on fighting. That was NSCN-K. K there stands for SS Khaplang. Khaplang was from another tribe. In fact, Khaplang was more from the bordering regions of Myanmar. There is free tribal movement across those borders. The same family can have half the family living this side, the other half living that side. And that group also had some Myanmarese, Naga elements in it. Some tribes other than the tribes, for example, Sema and Angamis in 1975, Lothas also. And then, in a way, Tangkhuls from Manipur, because Muiwa is from Manipur, from Ukhrul district of Manipur, and Ize Tangkhul. And these were other tribes, including a major tribe like Konyaks. They stayed back. So some of those splinter groups, Khaplang died. After Khaplang's death, that group also splintered into many factions. Myanmar state borders, Arunachal Pradesh, 2 districts now, Changlang and Tirap. Tirap was a very large district. In the course of time, it's been divided into 3. So there is the original Tirap district, which has Khonsa, Lazu, Namsang, but there are also 2 more districts, Changlang and Longding. All these are most distant and deserted, empty frontiers of India. In fact, you would wonder how come such a distant, desolate place get named Vijayanagar. That's because in 1961-62, that's when the threat of the Chinese was rising, that India started sending out patrols, etc., explorations to figure out India's borders. As we would remember, in the 50s it was that in the course of one such expedition that Major Bob Khating's team of Assam Rifles came upon Tawang and unfurled the Indian flag at Tawang. That's how Tawang became a part of India. India was discovering its frontiers. So in 1961-62, Major General Ajit Singh Guraya, he was the head of Assam Rifles, and he was carrying out an expedition and exploration in this area to figure out the easternmost extremities of India. And then they came to this spot, and this was a desolate spot where nobody lived. So he gave it the name, or maybe it was given the name of Vijayanagar after his son Vijay. This place was conjured up in the name of Vijay, the son of Major General Ajit Singh Guraya, head of Assam Rifles at that point. At that point, because India needed people in these most distant areas, 200 Gorkha families were settled here. That is how the settlement of Vijayanagar came into being. The other area you see Pangsau Pass. Pangsau Pass is also a very important area. That's also where the old Stilwell Road passes. Stilwell Road was named after General Joseph Stilwell, who went by the nickname of Vinegar Joe. I don't know why. And he was in charge of the big American Armed Forces expedition there, or operation there, to move supplies by air into China to help the Chinese forces that were fighting the Japanese at that point. This was the Second World War. That's where the Stilwell Road passed from. In fact, if you're driving on that highway, on the Indian side, at one point, there used to be a board, I hope it's still there, that said Beijing this far, Rangoon this far, this place this far, because at that point, the idea was that this is the road that will go right across into China, across all of East Asia. That's also Asian Highway 1. That's been the imagination that started under Dr. Manmohan Singh's Look East policy then, to build a highway connecting all of Asia but going east. That is, however, an idea still mostly on paper. Now these are very exotic lands also. There, just as you cross India's border across the pass, there is also a tiny lake just about 1.5 kilometers long at its longest and less than a kilometer at its widest. That got named, just by reputation, as the Lake of No Return, because in the Second World War, it was believed that a lot of the American aircraft that were going over the hump, that's what this region was described as. Over the hump means this is about 4,000 feet, 4,500 feet. You fly from the plains of Assam, you go over the hump, then you go over Myanmar and deliver those supplies in China. It was a very dangerous mission. So a lot of the aircraft did not come back, and a story got built up, more folklore than anything else, that many of these aircraft were lost in this lake. I think expeditions were carried out later and no wreckages were found. This is not such a deep lake. This poor little lake, in fact, acquired the reputation of being the local Bermuda Triangle, quite undeservedly, but that is how it is. In fact, that's why you will find in Assam a large string, a very extensive string of air bases, Chabua, Mohanbadi, then on the north bank, Tezpur, etc. Most of these were built by the Allied forces in the Second World War. Of course, since then, they've come very handy for Indian Air Force. Jorhat, Guwahati, Lilabari, again across the Brahmaputra. How can I forget any of those? NSCNK may not be very big or may not be anything, but you know what? Even 50 people with automatic weapons can play havoc. As NSCN did, how nasty can they be? Remember, 4th of June 2015, that's a story that is very familiar to us. It's been written about. It's also an incident that was used to set up Udi the surgical strike, the Vicky Kaushal movie. Now, that surgical strike by Indian Special Forces across the border into Myanmar was targeting the camps of NSCNK. Why? Because 4th of June 2015, NSCNK, in partnership with the Methi group, Kangle Yavol Kona Lup, they ambushed a convoy of Dogra regiment, killing 18 soldiers. These strikes were a payback for that ambush. 9th of June 2017, Khaplang died in Kachin state of Myanmar, and then divisions and further divisions started within his group, NSCNK. One group was led by Kham Gao and the other by Yun Ong. In between then, these groups have been fighting each other. In Feb and June 2019, Indian Army and Tatmadaw, that is the Myanmarese army together, they carried out two operations in February and June, Sunrise 1 and Sunrise 2, to finish whatever remained of NSCN. However, with all these groups, whatever you might do, some remain. In fact, because the Myanmarese army helped India in this operation against NSCNK, Indian army also acted against the Myanmarese Arakan army camps in southern Mizoram. Again, see southern Mizoram on your map. Just see how far these places are, and you can imagine how thinly populated and thickly wooded these regions are. It is elements of this NSCNK and remnants of ULFA. They started working together because they needed survival, they needed scale. They had now been reduced to being such small forces that they had to collaborate, work together. Also, they do their gun running, gold running, all that stuff, drug running, all together. That's their business model. The difference is, until now, they felt safe in Myanmar. Now they've been denied the safety of that harbor in distant northern Myanmar. That's the big change that's taken place now.